Hi, I'm Erin Larkin and this is John Jens, and we're back for part 2 of Australia's greatest Chardonnays. As you saw in video 1, or at least I hope you saw, we had to just cherry pick our favourites, knowing that there was far more than 6 Chardonnays that we could fit into one tasting. This is the other half. Perhaps there's more in us, we don't know, but
there's plenty more.
There's plenty more, but we've just distilled it down to a further 6 Chardonnays today. So starting in our left-hand glass, we've got the Tolpuddle 2018 Chardonnay from Tasmania. The next glass along is the Xanadu 2018 Reserve Chardonnay from Margaret River.
Yet to be released.
Yet to be released, but can we confirm? Pretty good. 2018 Pierrot Chardonnay in the third glass. The 2017 Gioconda Chardonnay. The 18 has just been released, so this is only just, if you're lucky, we'll find one or both in the bottle shops at the moment. The 2017 Voyager MJW Chardonnay from Margaret River, and closing out on the 2017 Woodlands Chloe Chardonnay, also from Margaret River. So, starting in glass number 1, John, while I drink this, do you want to tell them a little bit about this vineyard? Because it's an interesting story.
Well, before I do,
Yes.
if it's okay,
Yeah.
I just want to get back. When Erin and I were talking about Cabernets a couple of videos ago, I mentioned the show results, which are pretty extraordinary on Cabernets. Now, and they are truly extraordinary. 34 of the last 42 best Cabernet trophies at the capital city wine shows since 2014 have been won by Western Australia. All of those bar one from Margaret River. Now, with Margaret River and Chardonnays, there's a 7 capital city wine show system in Australia, and let's assume that Margaret River's got 1.5% of Australia's Chardonnay. 1.5%. In 2015, Margaret River won 5 of the 7, or Margaret River Wines won 5 of the best 7 Chardonnay trophies. In 2016, I've got that wrong, sorry. 2016, 5 of the best Chardonnay trophies. 2017, 5 of the best Chardonnay trophies from 1.5% of Australia's Chardonnay fruit. One little tiny area. And then 2018, just 2 of the 7. And then last year, 2019, 5 of the 7 again. Quite extraordinary from 1.5%. We're not saying that Margaret River is producing all of, or is the greatest wine producing Chardonnay region in the country. And Erin and I talk about these sort of things quite a bit.
Often.
It's not the greatest, but geez, it's bloody good. And the wines are really worthwhile looking at. And we've got, as you can see here, another couple, because we had a couple last time too, of Australia's greatest Chardonnays from the eastern states, because we love lining them up. Both Erin and I want perspective. We want to know how things sit. Then Tolpuddle. Now, Tasmania. I reckon that it takes a little bit of time over the years, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's Heathcote with Shiraz, or the Great Southern with Pinot, or even the Macedon Ranges with Pinot. It takes a little bit of time for everyone to work out where they're at, how to handle the fruit, how to get the best out of it. So it's only in recent years that we've started to see the best out of Tasmania's Chardonnays, despite the hype that's been there for 20 or 30 years. And also, I reckon, and I'm going from memory, I reckon it's only the middle 90s that there are only about 200 acres of vines in the whole island of Tasmania. It's quite extraordinary, the growth since, and the imagery created around the wines. So Tolpuddle, the Shaw and Smith boys, the Shaw and Smith team, a great operation in Australian wine for many reasons, including their Adelaide Hills material, apart from their bigger Sauvignon Blanc production, but they produce some great Pinots and some great Chardonnays. So elegant, refined, classy, almost sophisticated, serious length. Well,
I think it might be. I think it might be. Do you know, I'm going to interrupt you because I just love this wine. And so the first vintage I think I had was the 2012. Was that the first they made? It might be the first that they made. I'll do my research and I'll let you know. But I'm pretty sure that 2012 was the first vintage that I had, and I fell in love with it. And just recently have looked at the 2014 in a blind lineup, and we all thought, all of the people in the tasting thought that it was from Burgundy. I mean, it is just incredibly layered and spicy. The acidity is awesome. It just sort of sears right the way through the fruit. And it's ripe, but it doesn't ever lean into the tropical. It's always kind of stone fruits and white stone fruit, actually. It's kind of salty, and I love it. I love this wine, and I think sub $100. I would stray into this is very good value territory, actually.
So I think
Is that a bit pretentious?
around about 80. And we know that Margaret River Chardonnays, usually with that gingering clone, usually have a bit of bulk and volume. But Erin and I have been talking prior to coming on that the Giaconda is a fuller and stronger, more powerfully structured wine, but you check the alcohol and it's still reasonably low alcohol. But this is still, to me, a finer, more elegant wine.
Absolutely. And that's why we served it first, because you can only, you should be ordering, unless there's another reason, from finer and more delicate and layered, so that you can appreciate all of those layers before you move into more volume and more saturation and more concentration. Sometimes that can drown out the finer wines.
So a couple of these might take a little bit of time to show their best and to be wonderfully drinkable. Lovely right now.
Lovely right now. The biggest danger to it is how good it is right now. Speaking of dangerously good, this 2018 Xanadu Reserve Chardonnay. So I have been very vocal in my love for the Xanadu Reserve wines and the Stevens Road, but in particular the Reserve Chardonnay. I just think it's a gorgeous wine. This is all about crystalline purity and power. We looked last night at the 2018 Stevens Road Chardonnay alongside, and where that is cool and fine and edgy and racy and delicious, this is rich and powerful, but it retains all of that poise and that focus, and I absolutely freaking love this wine. This is one of my favourite Chardonnay wines in Australia.
So
that's a big call, but I'm going to...
Everyone will want to know, how do you spell freaking? No, just kidding. Okay.
It's a much more polite version of another way.
Okay, so for me, Xanadu, Stevens Road and the Reserve wines are their super premiums, round about the $100 mark. Two things I'd like to say. My friends and I, and I haven't talked to Erin about this, so I don't know whether she agrees or not.
Not included in the friend group, obviously.
We think that the Reserve Chardonnay is the better wine of the Stevens Road and the Reserve in the Chardonnays, but we feel that the Stevens Road is a little bit finer and longer in the Cabernet. So we prefer the Stevens Road Cabernet and the Reserve Chardonnay. The second thing I really want to make the point about, and this is serious, some wines are drinking beautifully when they're young, when they first come out. My experience with Xanadu is the wines are a little bit difficult to understand when they first come out, show enormous power, enormous length, beautifully structured. They've got opulence from the viscosity from that ginging clone, but then you give those wines another 2, another 3, another 4 years. Some wines blossom with age, and it's the same in Burgundy. I buy a lot of Burgundy. This store sells about 1,400 cases of Burgundy here. You treat different wines in different ways. Xanadu, with 2 or 3 or 4 years of age, the Chardonnays, the Reserves and stuff, are just wonderful. I don't mean good. They are absolutely stunning and amongst the great drinks in Australia. I love them.
And I think that often when they're a little bit older, they display some of the, or lots of the freshness that many Chardonnays show on release. They just kind of exist in stasis for the time that they're held in the fridge. And then when you open them, they just are truly beautiful wines. So if you haven't already, might we suggest that you do yourself a favour, find a bottle. The 17 was gorgeous as well. 17 was a cooler vintage, and cooler vintages in Margaret River have produced some absolutely astoundingly good Chardonnays. So if you can't find the 18, release in a short time, look for the 17, also beautiful, and if you find the 16, well, good for you.
With the Tolpuddle and with the Xanadu, tiny quantities only come to Perth, and tiny quantities come to Perth. Tiny. So you can either get them at some of the very few specialist wine stores that are here, or in the eastern states, or get them online from the guys.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah. Moving into wine number 3, this is the 2018 Pierro. John, tell us about this wine.
Okay, so Mike, really interesting, and no one knows these sort of stories. The world's moved on. When Dr. Michael Peterkin came back from Roseworthy College in the early days back to his home here in Western Australia and went down and joined the practice that Kevin Cullen and Bill Pannell, the famous Bill Pannell, were involved in Busselton, he was one of the first people in Australia to start using things like batonage, lees ferment, lees contact, because at Roseworthy in those days, and I was there, they told us none of that sort of stuff, none of that French sort of influence. We don't want that sort of stuff. They've got great fruit, but boy, their winemaking techniques are questionable. Well, their winemaking techniques were fantastic, and we were making weak, insipid, flavourless wines. Mike Peterkin was one of the first people who had the courage to say, I'm going that way, that's the way I want to do it, and he started producing great wines. So over the last 35 years, I would suggest that Lewin Estate consistently has produced probably Australia's consistency, not every time, but consistently, have produced many of Australia's greatest Chardonnays. But for 20 of those 35 years, or 17 of those 35 years, Pierro has been amongst the 2 greatest Chardonnays in Western Australia. This wine, to me, lighter, finer, fresher, but we're still with serious complexity, depth, texturing edges, lovely length, lovely finish and aftertaste. Touch young at the moment, needs a touch of time, but still a very, very serious wine in this lineup. Lovely. I'm probably putting the Xanadu a touch ahead of it, and I probably don't want to go too far on that because they're all very, very good wines.
They are. They're here for a reason.
On a different day, you could choose different wines.
This Pierro, I looked at it for the first time here at Le Mans, right on release, maybe 6 months ago, and it was in a blind lineup, which is the best way to look at wine because there's no bias, and it was incredibly fresh and spicy. There's a real this wine is a much denser, more powerful style of Chardonnay, in my opinion. But on release, when it was so fresh like that, was just so spicy, and it had this really lovely matchstick sort of nose. And I'm seeing all of those things again today. It's a really lovely wine. And do you know, after our first video, I had 3 people contact me and say, but what about Pierro? Pierro's got a really, really, and rightly so, strong following in Australia. So. And
are we saying that is very close to the best they've made today?
I would say it is.
Yeah, yeah. So it's,
even though the 2015 Vintage Reserve was very, very, very good. I mean, I don't know if they're doing a Vintage Reserve this year. I haven't heard
I'm
either
not quite
way.
sure, I don't know. Yeah.
But this is an exceptional one.
And so I think when I first saw it at that time that Aaron was talking about, I too, or at least I believed it was one of the best they've made so far, if not the best so far. I thought it was very, very good.
Speaking of when I mentioned matchstick and flint and cap gun, and I didn't say cap gun's here, the Gioconda Chardonnay. So in terms of alcohol content, these are pretty much all the same, either 13 or 13.5. This, however, presents as an absolute monster of a wine. It is so full-bodied. If you have a Chardonnay, a Burgundy glass, this is the biggest candidate for that glass ever. I love this one. I mean, there's a lot going on in this glass, but this has where I think Margaret River Chardonnay is so, the ginging clone is so strong that the fruit profile takes such a centre role on stage. The reason why I love this Giaconda wine is because the spice component takes up almost as much space on my tasting note as the fruit components do. So there's an awful lot to go back and forth and look at and smell and taste and remember and go back and look at again. And for me, and I don't know if you agree or disagree with this, but that is the, I mean, I said that I have found that this is like Burgundy in mass lineups, but this to me really takes me to the heart of complex, worked, full-bodied Chardonnay from Burgundy. It's just my thought, but I mean, I love the wine.
Agree on the Burgundy exercise, and we did mention Cullen last video as often being Burgundy-like. Same with Giaconda. You may not have
curry leaf.
You may not have picked it up in the video, but I am a little bit older than Aaron. I don't know if it's obvious or not. But ever since I've been young, Giaconda have been the benchmark Chardonnay in Victoria and very close to, if not Australia. Many people have said that in many years, for example, the 1996, for example, that great Gioconda Chardonnay, which at the time may have been the best Australian Chardonnay made to date, they're legendary. They've got a cult following, absolutely wonderful stuff. I agree almost totally with your discussion and description of this wine, except I can't use, I'm not clever enough to use some of your terms.
If we agree, that's fine.
But it's to me strongly structured, and as Aaron said, different fruit flavours, different fruit characters to each of the eastern states wines have different characters to the ones that we usually see in the west, and which it's very easy for us to get a cellar palate on these things, perhaps.
It is. Which is why we throw these in.
Yeah.
Because you must make sure you're fresh.
Strong, powerful, structured, almost a little bit of honeysuckle lift on the nose.
Yeah,
And then,
Agree.
but needs time, in my opinion. I think the way Erin's talking, she'd love to have it now with given dishes. This one, to me, needs a little bit of time to soften out. It's powerfully structured, good, strong acid tucked away behind the fruit. It'll live for a long time. Going to be a very, very good wine, an enormous length and strong structuring.
There's a nice, I said curry leaf before, but there's also a really nice orange peel kind of tangerine.
I think that's what I'm at.
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think
really
you're close
like
with me.
it.
I agree
Ginger
with that.
root almost. It's really, there's a lot to say about it.
You know, we are sort of talking different ways about different wines, but we really have to emphasise the fact that these are, as with those wines we looked at last time, these are amongst the greatest Chardonnays in Australia, the country that's producing, outside of the great heartland of Burgundy, many of the finest Chardonnays in the world. We're talking, tiny amounts of difference in quality amongst just a great range of wines. These are fantastic wines.
I couldn't agree more. Moving into the next wine. So this is the Voyager MJW 2017 Chardonnay. I'm going to let you talk about this, but I just want to preface it by saying that I spent one of the most magnificent days down at Voyager earlier this year, prior to COVID, and I spent the day with the winemaker Steve James, and he took me to all of their vineyards. We spoke about clones, which I don't know if that turns you on, but for me, I'm a gardener. I love plants. We're talking about different clones, where they grow, what their characters are like. We're looking at grapes at that time, which were obviously, for Chardonnay, it was a couple of days prior to harvest, and obviously the reds were a way off, but it was so instructive for me to be picking berries off the vine and trying them and going, oh, that's clone 95 Chardonnay in its berry form. Awesome. Understand it. Gin, I get it. What this wine is a perfect amalgam of clone 95 and the gin clone together. The 95 brings citrus acidity and a line and a linearity to the wine, and the gin clone contributes the expansive power, concentration and depth that this wine exhibits. And so together, I think it's the perfect example of the sum of its parts. It's greater than the sum of its parts.
Okay, so is that Voyager MJW, Michael John Wright, the founder, who passed away a little while ago, and who drove Voyager Estate. Then Alex Wright, now Alex Burt, and she now has a young daughter with her husband Julian, took control of and bought the wine and took control of it perhaps 18 months ago. An extraordinary situation where she had her sister that she'd bought out and 200 plus guests from around the world, all over the world, there, and had a magnificent tasting, magnificent dinner, and said effectively, she didn't say this in words, I'm taking control, now it's my baby, I'm going to look after that, my people are looking after it, and they're doing a wonderful job. The wines have never been better. Michael Wright would have been very proud. I love this wine. Some of these others I've said already, the Pierro needs a touch more time, the Giaconda needs a touch more time, the Xanadu needs a touch more time. I could drink this MJW Voyager right now, 2017, which this is the first time I've tried it, and I don't even know when it was released. It's not cheap. I think about $120, $140, but whatever it is, seamless, textural, fine, lingering, enormous length, relaxed, beautiful finish, beautiful aftertaste. Collingwood winning this year's grand final, I could easily sit down and have the bottle of that on my own while I was getting excited.
It's a really beautiful wine, and I was so impressed by everything that they're doing there. They are testing at every level all of the nuances and all of the variabilities of everything that they do. So what you see from Voyager now is the output of all of that testing, and for all of the nerds out there, I'm sure there's many of you just like me, it's a very, very exciting thing to see.
She's not a nerd.
I swear I am.
Talk to me about the aging of these wines.
About how long?
Yeah.
Aging is really just about how you want to drink them. So in my experience with, if we're talking Margaret River, with my experience with Margaret River, I'm 34 now, they I mean, I'm still tracking down 86 Lewins. It's my great example, but I'm still tracking down 86 Lewin Art Series Chardonnays, and they're getting old, but they're beautiful. They're so beautiful. So I like to drink Chardonnay and Cabernet when they're at that perfect apex of they still have primary fruit. So you still have citrus, there's still stone fruit, it's still delicious and fresh, but there's all of these other magnificent tertiary characters and spice and layers that come in. For me, I think the most beautiful time to drink these wines, these Margaret River wines, will be like 10 years from now. That would just be so thrilling. 10 years from now, so 2030, looking at these 4 wines. With these, I know from experience that this wine ages exceptionally well and looks more and more like Burgundy as it gets older. Again, I would be in the 8 to 10 year bracket for this wine. And the Giaconda, I mean, you know, we had an old Gioconda Magnum, I don't know if you remember, at Forey's 70th. And I think it was 2001, maybe, somewhere around there. And it was an amazing wine experience for me. So at that time, that wine would have been 10 or 12 years old, and it was just utterly glorious. Again, it was from Magnum, so I would go slightly longer with this, maybe 10 to 12 years. But I mean, they're going to go for 20 or 30. It just, like I say, depends on how you like to drink them.
Okay then, and then we're moving on to, thank you, we're now moving on to the Woodlands. So Woodlands aren't as well known for Chardonnay as these other people are. Their great strength is marvellous Cabernet in every price range. They make a tiny quantity. No matter what they do in that vineyard, they seem to have problems one way or another each year. They get tiny quantities, and I think they're producing about 100 or 120 dozen a year. Only 3 or 4 dozen come to Perth each year. They've got their other markets around the world and around Australia to get to, plus there's obviously cellar door sales. The 15 and 16, I felt, were the greatest clearly that they'd made to date. Cleaner, fresher, racier, more lively, wonderful finish, wonderful aftertaste, but finer and tighter as compared to some of the richer styles that we see from time to time. This one, and it may just be this bottle, I don't know, this is deeper in colour, and it has been well stored, I know because I've stored it, since release perhaps 18 months ago. Deeper in colour, mellower, rounder, I won't say toffee, but not even honey, but a little bit of that, both texturally and in terms of flavour. And while a lovely drink, it's not what I expected in the wine right now. It's
very rich, and I think certainly the 18 Chloe, which I've looked at just recently, I was totally enamoured by. Again, I looked at it blind, so it was a really completely unbiased scenario, and I feel obviously the best way to do it. This has all of the density and the fruit power and the concentration that I expect.
I'm going to leave you on your own for 30 seconds while I grab another bottle.
You're about to witness something that John does frequently. So John has this thing where you look at a wine, you try it, and you're like, oh, it's really good. And he'll be like, you don't love it. And you're like, well, it's very good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. And he'll be like, just wait, I'll get another bottle. You know, never mind that it's a $500 Grand Cru or it's a Woodlands Chloe, which is certainly very far from cheap. But if you don't register the excitement that he knows is available in that wine, he'll open a second bottle, just like he's about to do. And I can tell you, 9 times out of 10, he's right. So I'm very much looking forward to this. So we're moving back into Riedel Magnum territory, these glasses.
So it's not as deep in colour as the other one, a little bit lighter in colour, a little bit fresher, and is a lovely drink. I think it's a different wine.
It is, and it doesn't have. There's a finish on the other, which just didn't lift you through the finish. That's how I'm going to describe that. It just didn't lift, but this absolutely is doing, and this is much where I'd rather see the Woodlands Chloe, which is a glorious wine, and it has such a following. You know, I did a dinner last year at this private house in Fremantle. It was the most magnificent night, and they brought magnums of Chloe. So I don't know how many bottles, if you're watching, Stuart and Andrew, I'm not sure how many bottles that you do in magnums, but they brought 2 magnums of Chloe in 2 different vintages, and it was just the most exciting night. Beautiful wines, and as this is, so
finer, more lively, showing, I can't say greater length, but certainly at least the same length, which makes it a very, very good wine. Number of nuances of flavour running right through from the middle palate to the finish, and which adds greater energy, greater interest, and a lovely wine. And one of the reasons I do it is, whether it's with customers in our restaurants or anything else, is that I don't want people to have the wrong impression of the wine.
Which is so important.
And I would hate you to think that we were not a fan of Woodland Chardonnays when in fact out the door it goes.
Yeah.
Whereas, and it's not very often you do get bottle variation with a screw cap, but it can happen, and that's an example of it just there. This is a much finer wine. So
this is beautiful, and this belongs right here. Look, the world of Chardonnay is varied and exciting and broad and full of new discoveries. I mean, when we were talking about what to put in here today, I mean, I had a list, so I was like, oh, I don't know, we could put in all of these beautiful wines. Any of them would be gorgeous. This is a result of us tasting widely and pointing and saying these have been the highest pointed wines that we've looked at and we love them. If you've got any suggestions about wines that you'd like us to open, please let us know. I mean, we're totally open. You're probably going to suggest something that we thought of already. So don't be shy. John, I mean, I'm going to pick my favourite.
Well, just before,
I mean, you know,
just before you do finish then, so if people do send in their suggestions, even if we don't have them ourselves, we work out how we can get them. So today, and over the last few times, Erin may have ducked up to the boat shed, the loft.
I ran through lashing rain to get that last bottle of Cullen Dana Madeline.
In Cottesloe, it might be over to the Swanbourne Cellars people. It might be down to J. Beeson at Old Bridge Cellars. We duck around to different places to try and get all the wines that we can. I've picked up some from Liberty Liquors in the past up in Claremont. That's only in our local area, but we'll try and get them if you're interested.
Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. It helps me enormously, and it means that I can put out more videos, so please do.
And Erin does do an email every Friday.
Every Friday with my...
Which has got fantastic information, covers a lot of area. I really like them, and yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing, yeah. And I would point, the lowest I'd point any of these is 18.9. For me, that's well above gold medal status. And any one of these, and those ones that we looked at last time, is and should be exactly what wine should be, a mouthful of pleasure, and these are.
They are. Thank you,
God
John.
bless. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.